notion, kind of being stuck in your head, stuck in your dreams. And Moon Dance was kind of among that vein of kind of being tricked, really. Just really explored the idea of, if you look into any of the literature that surrounds either magic or any of the New Age philosophies out there, uh, they all very, very much have to do with inversion, just looking at things in a different way, which on the surface sounds great, which when you set out to try and write stuff or create something, especially in songwriting, you're always kind of got your ears open and your eyes are always looking around for something that can be inverted, because that's a lot of fun to explore artistically. And often truth, things that are true, can be described in a contrary way. There's often 2 points and that seem contrary, but they both kind of have to be followed to direct yourself, to get yourself into a middle ground. However, I think this idea that truth can be contrary gets perverted when you start looking into things that at least used to be called New Age. I think they're kind of started to re-identify themselves in different ways. But like, for example, I remember reading one story. I think it came from like an Edgar Cayce book. It was just now, Edgar Cayce was a guy who would go into trances and claimed to be telling stories from past lives and such. And so he liked to, in his later years, he really got into kind of telling Bible stories with his own little twist. And he had a very typical New Age Gnostic type Jesus that was the character in these stories. And this Jesus was kind of always a laughing, giggly, happy-go-lucky fellow, kind of like myself, so it was very appealing. Um, and and didn't have a care in the world. And there was one typical story where he was with his apostles and they came across a rotting animal of some sort, and the apostles were all disgusted by what they saw. And but Jesus, the enlightened one, pointed out to them, "Oh, look how beautiful its teeth are, and it has beautiful, beautiful teeth. Don't be disgusted by this mountain of rot. It has beautiful teeth, and how silly you are for not noticing that it has beautiful teeth in the pile of rotten flesh." And that's and I think that's really the idea that Moondance is exploring, and really why I just became progressively less and less comfortable with doing anything in association with the idea of magic or New Age. Is it's always um, it's always taking ugly things and trying to present it as something beautiful. And it's like, oh, look at these beautiful teeth. It's like, oh, the house is burning down, but look how beautiful the flames are. I've got this festering sore on my arm, but look at the wonderful colors coming out of it. Look, it feeds the maggots. Don't you care about other life in the world? And it really, and with that type of thinking, it's really tough to come to a conclusion of what is just good, what is good for you, what is good for others. It's just the notion of good is always seen through a dark mirror. It's always um, it's always a mask under a mask under a mask under a mask. And it's really tough to just kind of get to the point of something and be able to even um make decisions in your own life with a sure foot. Because if nothing means nothing, then it's. And really, I kind of get the impression that a lot of this confusion uh, from the literature, it often comes from people who like to go into trances and recite things whispered in their ears. And I kind of get the feeling that we seem to be surrounded by some kind of something that we can't see that doesn't. I don't know if it doesn't like us or it just doesn't seem to have our best interests in mind. And we seem to have some ability to communicate with these things. They don't seem to be all knowing, but they do have um, a perspective from ours that does give them some insight into things that we don't have insight in. Um, but this seems to be used uh, in a way to cause as many people as possible just to not necessarily to do bad things, but just waste their life. Um, I guess I've kind of later, maybe too late in life, I've kind of realized that the notion of murder is a lot more expansive than I thought. Now I always knew like the notion of shall not murder was what is murder, but it's murder is a question of law. It's unlawful murder, but there's many ways to murder a person. One is really control of a person is murdering them. If you don't like what a person does or who they are, just trying to um, kick and scream or hit and force or push or kind of make them into something you think they should be, isn't really changing them. It is really, it's murdering them. It's making them into something that they aren't. And to try to force a person into being a different person is to murder the original person. And and I think with this, a lot of the spirit literature kind of does this in a long, drawn out way. It may not do it in a moment or even for a season, but it just seems content to confuse and get a person wrapped up for the duration of their life. So what they may do is limited. It just seems to wrap a person up into a mental straitjacket and just keep them that way, and just let them stay that way and not develop at all. And that's what for me that's what Moondance is all about. Just getting kind of wrapped up in something and kind of seduced in a spider web. But the result is that you're all just kind of tied up and stuck to the web and not really doing anything with yourself. You're just kind of under the control of something that doesn't give a damn about you. And yeah, this is kind of its long, drawn out way of murdering you. And so it's not a pleasant song at all, is it? It was actually Chad's favorite song of the time. Well, I guess on the album, Light Shines would have been his favorite by a mile, but this one he enjoyed quite a bit. He didn't play on it because he was out working for a mine in Thompson when I recorded this. And by the time he came back, it just moved on to other things. So, yeah, it was all me on this one. But yeah, it started out a little bit different than that big idea I just shared. It was originally a song called Acorn, and for some reason I had the idea of an acorn kind of being planted and becoming the tree, kind of becoming something, and that kind of. Really couldn't get a handle on where I was going with that thematically, so it became this moon dance thing, kind of about getting your head all twisted up in this new age stuff. Yeah. Well, I guess that's maybe that's enough big ideas for one day to chew on. I feel like that's something I could just keep talking about indefinitely, but maybe it's not always best to try and fill in all the holes or completely settle a matter. Um, but yeah, Moon Dance, cool song. I like it. All right, okay.